Hello, my friends. Gonna get Cian on here in a second. John is off traveling this week, so I'm excited to have Cian on here, an old friend of mine who's a super talented engineer. Love him dearly. He'll be on here in a second, and we'll just chat a little bit. How you guys doing today? What's up, everybody? What's going on? Yeah, I'm about to head home to the Bay today for a bit to see some family, but I'll be back next week for a Live with John again. We've got a few other people that I'm talking to about coming on here. We might do some live Twitch stuff. Been talking to folks on the Discord about doing a Twitch thing with some feedback on mixes and productions and songs and things like that. So if you guys aren't on the Discord, go check that out. We're kind of deciding together as a community how to do it. But that should be fun. Let's see, Cian will be on here in a second. How you guys all doing? What's going on? There he is. Grab Cian in a second here. See if I can do this. There we go. All right, getting him on here.
Mr. Rad.
What's up?
What up?
How you doing, man?
I'm good. Just got back from a little bike ride. Grabbed a little cup of coffee.
Nice, man. I'm trying to see. The comments are going completely over your face.
I don't know how this works.
I think people can probably minimize comments if they want to.
I'm just gonna put a little blush on my cheeks here. Let me play with this.
That sounds good. You're looking great through all the people here. Let me see if I can adjust this somehow.
It's cool. I can see you fine, so it's great.
Okay,
that's all I care about.
Yeah. Okay. Good. How you doing, man?
I'm good, man. Yeah, just in the studio here.
So how long have you been in that new spot? You built this studio, maybe actually we could do a little intro thing. So you and I have known each other for, I don't know, how long has it been? Since whenever that Maniac record happened is when we got to know each other.
Through a mutual friend, Bryce, shout out Bryce.
Yeah, he was on the live here.
I think I was living in New York and you were visiting, you were doing something out there.
Oh, that's
and we went out and we went to, I remember like some tequila bar or something like that.
And my cousin Emily was there too.
I think so. And you were like,
NYU.
you don't have to shoot tequila. You can just sip it if it's good tequila. And I was like, you're fucking crazy. I don't know what. And then, I think we just kind of stayed in touch and you were obviously my link to Barefoot.
I know that people are, as you know, and you've been amazing for those that don't know or not on the Discord. Cian has been amazing on the Discord, giving advice, giving thoughts, and spending a lot of time on there. I know it's much appreciated. And people are often asking on the Discord, on the lives, lots of questions about how do I make connections? How do I get in? How do I get my foot in the door? It's probably the most asked question in the lives. And so maybe we could go into a little detail about your thought process. Cause you were, I'll give you my version of your life and then you can expand on it. I know you talked about this a bit on the Conversations podcast, which was amazing, by the way. You did, a couple hours with the Conversations guys, which everybody should check out. It's, telling great stories and great perspectives. But so, like you said, I met you through Bryce in New York. And then at some point, I needed an extra person to help me out with this Maniac record, which is the band that Sean Harris from the Matches did after the Matches disbanded for a bit. And so you came down, I think you were then in Santa Cruz. And so you came down and worked on that record. And then from there, because I was doing it at Barefoot, I think at a time when Eric was taking a bit of a break, but you somehow connected with Eric and linked with Eric outside of anything that I did. You were just in there and did your thing. So you had built a studio in Santa Cruz. You were doing some engineering. You played in bands. You're a drummer. Obviously, this new St. Vincent record that you mixed, you also played drums on some stuff. So can you talk a little bit about your journey and
my entire life? Yeah.
but I
hear you. It's interesting. A good thread to start and the genesis of a lot of, I would say, my moves in that kind of year, like I'd say like post-college, trying to figure things out was, it's interesting. Someone mentioned the networking thing because I graduated from college, didn't study music, just got into it. I started interning at a recording studio, played in a band.
This is in Santa Cruz?
This is in Santa Cruz, yeah. And then, I was probably like 19 or 20 at the time. I kind of really got into it, And I think once I finished at Santa Cruz, I was like, I need something different. I need a scene change. I've been here too long. And New York City was just always this kind of pie in the sky, like, oh man, that sounds like a great place. There's got to be music stuff there. Like, so I just moved. It was like a very quick, very unthought out thing. And it's interesting. Some people on the Discord talk about that kind of work-life balance of trying to do music in your free time, but also hold a full-time job. And I was working at Apple, fixing computers, just getting iPods thrown at me by angry fucking people in Soho. And I was just like, I lasted a year and I was like, what am I doing here? Because I had a studio there that I was renting. I didn't know anybody.
In New York, you had a studio you were renting?
Yeah, like I had a couple of studios actually, and thought I was like, cool, like I'm ready to go. I got a studio, I got mics, I got drums, like I got to drive to do this. Like every waking moment, if I wasn't either working or sleeping, I was at the studio trying to just like, I was taking drum lessons, just trying to up my game, but I didn't fucking know anybody. And it was a real struggle because I had left a music network in the Bay Area, just from playing in bands, just from,
This is a huge point. It's a huge, I just posted about it on the Discord, answered some of this question. Your network is so important.
And it's so overlooked. And your network is not like necessarily people that you are in constant communication with. Your network is just people that like, oh, we played a show together that one time. And that's enough of a, hey, we're on a same level. We know some of the same people. That's all you need. You just need an opportunity like that. I mean, it's kind of like me meeting you just through a mutual friend. You didn't know my skill set when you met me. It was just like, okay, cool. There's a vibe. And we kind of riffed off of it. And it went from there. And I realized very quickly, I remember I was taking drum lessons from a guy and he introduced me to this other engineer. And I was like just itching to talk to someone because I was like at my wit's end in New York. And this guy, Jason Finkel, shout out. And he was basically like, he's like, I can get you an internship in New York, but like, it sounds like a lot of people in the Bay Area and there's kind of rad music happening there right now. Like, what are you doing here? And it was like just enough of like, okay, fuck this. Called the guy that I used to, Andy Zenzak in Santa Cruz, that I used to intern for. And I was like, I think I'm going to come back. Like, I'll work for free. I might be able to still work for Apple. And he's like, yeah, get back here. Like, let's figure something out. And then that evolved into, we built a studio together, like fully went in on the design. He was definitely the lead. Me and another guy were kind of like the youngins, just kind of like scraping together, like borrowing money where we could, putting together a plan. And we built this studio and it was incredible. I mean, a real proper facility from the ground up. I can't tell you how much I learned in that process in terms of
from building a studio from scratch.
Yeah. And I wasn't like the main contractor. I wasn't the guy hanging the drywall. I'm talking like the execution of the idea and figuring out like, okay, what am I going to be doing here? How can I create a space that's going to, allow me to do that? And also be in Santa Cruz, which is not the most ideal place to build, so you kind of have to accommodate everything from the singer-songwriter to it can't be like Eric Valentine's space where it's like, it's just a rock studio.
It's just for him.
What you do. Just for him. Yeah. And so that's where it kind of started off. And I built the network and I just got very comfortable, playing music with people, meeting them very organically, getting gigs, and got to the point where like, I was just kind of a working class engineer in Santa Cruz, recording nobody. And then that's when I think you had reached out and and I remember going down, it was like a fast weekend. I think I drove down on like a Friday, left on a Sunday, worked super long days with you, but it was just like my first opportunity to see things be done at a higher level than I'd been used to. I thought I was like the fucking big fish in the small pond making records in Santa Cruz. And it was like, oh wow, this is a different thing. And I think there was a couple months went by where I was just like, I got to figure out how to get out of here. I got to do something different. And then I reached out, I got Eric's email address through I don't know if it was from you or somewhere else, but I reached out to him, kind of cold email, just being like, hey, if you ever need someone on the couch to like, get you coffee or whatever, like I'm your guy. And then he wrote right back and was like, yeah, I talked to Matt about you. Like, I need a new assistant, blah, blah, blah. And then it just kind of went from there. And I felt bad because I just built the studio with my friends. And then it was literally like a year later, I was like, I got a job working for Eric Valentine. I don't know if I'm coming back. And I didn't.
Yeah, you basically took my old job. Once
I
I moved on to doing more production stuff. It's interesting, man. I mean, the answer to everybody's question about how do I get my foot in the door is that there's no one answer, and you should just kind of try to do everything. I mean, in that story, there's a lot of things that you couldn't have calculated, and there's a lot of things that might have worked for someone else. Like moving to New York, you might have met the right 6 people, and all of a sudden you would have gone crazy in New York, or whatever. I mean, but just the fact that you were in New York when I happened to be in New York, and then, I don't know, 6 months, a year later, I was like, you want to come help out on this thing? But then you happen to be in California. You happen to be back in California, so you could drive down to work. Like, there's no good route for this stuff other than what you said at the beginning, which is the networks of people. And the networks of people can be your local folks. The networks of people can be, obviously now a lot of it's going to be on the internet, but still there's so much in-person hanging out that's really not about, like my decision. I actually don't remember exactly why I called you. I just remember, I think I just liked you, and Bryce liked you, and you had built studios and you knew stuff about studios. And I was like, that guy could be good. And it was just from meeting people and knowing folks and liking to hang out and maybe taking a tequila shot or sipping some tequila, whatever it was. I got to hit my cousin up too. I forgot that she was there that time too. She was going to NYU at the time. Well, and the other thing I'll say that I want people to know is, you built that. You talk about building the studio in Santa Cruz. You're the guy, as you obviously know, you're the guy I call when I'm thinking about doing a new setup. You helped me with my last 2 studios, came in and basically were like a friend consultant to come in and give me thoughts. Your expertise in that realm seems to be of big benefit to you, especially now that you're moving into like full on mixer stuff. You got the St. Vincent stuff coming out. I'm sure you got other things in the pipeline. And you just built your studio. Is it finished now? How did you decide to do that? I know you worked with the Unfuck guys a little bit. I see Rory just got on. What's up? Shout out to Rory. But can you talk through that process a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, we both had the insane luxury of working for Eric at Barefoot, and that
we'll definitely talk more about.
Yeah, that sets kind of an incredible standard for not only the facility, the gear, but the kind of the network, the people that you're surrounded by. I mean, just being in that building, having Greg Camp from Smash Mouth cruise in, or like Blag from The Door, just like the people you're rubbing shoulders with was so huge and instrumental in kind of, I think, also building our confidence as just people in the music world. Just being able to sit in a room with someone that is infinitely more successful than you, and just hold a conversation and be a cool dude and like offer something. That's something I had never experienced before being at Barefoot. So I think that was a big deal. And I think you and I both felt similarly when we left Barefoot. I remember you were in B for a long time, and Eric, basically commandeered the room back, or I forget how it worked out, but you were like, shit, I've been here for a decade plus. Now I got to set up my own thing somewhere else. And at the time it's daunting because you're so comfortable in this space, and you've made so many records in this space, and the space affords you this kind of gravitas, in this industry. It's so studio gear oriented that,
I mean, it's a historic studio.
It is
legitimately like Stevie Wonder and like all kinds of crazy.
And it just added to it. But there's something about when you're meeting a client for the first time and they come into your room and there's a giant console, there's tape machines, there's gear. It can mean nothing, but there is that kind of like, oh wow, there's this person has achieved this level of like scenery, and at Barefoot, that is probably the high point that you or I will ever have in terms of that, and leaving that is tough. It's emotional because like a lot of your relationships were formed in Barefoot, a lot of like great memories were had there, but also there's that like what I think was a crutch of like, I need to be in this building to be successful making records. the short of it is you don't need to be. That's not true at all. I am the reason that people call me to make records, not the fucking room I'm sitting in, or most of the time anyway. And so once you kind of overcome that obstacle, which I think you did when you moved to your first place at Swing House, then it's fun, because then you get to just be like, cool, what are all the things I didn't like about the previous space? And how do I get to make it my own? You know, how do I like really, you know, set up my workflow? I remember you were really kind of leaning into pop, you know, songwriting production. So it made sense to have more synthesizers and kind of vocal options instead of like a shitload of guitars and drums. Like that just wasn't benefiting you, you know?
Yeah.
And for me, I kind of really dug into the mixing thing as I started to kind of have a family and you know, try and get a little bit more work-life balance. So I got to like figure out, okay, what's important in this space? I don't need a giant drum tracking room. I don't need giant mains so I can blow the ears off of an A&R person. I just need a space that's pleasant to be, that I can be efficient in, and that works. And that sounds really good. Like my goal into building this studio was initially to just get out of a previous situation. But once I realized like, oh, there's the capacity here to really make this sound incredible. And shout out to the Unfuck guys for really kind of helping me kind of see that vision through. Then it was just fun, you know, then it was like, cool. And not only is it serving my career, but it's just a pleasant space. It's a space that I built, and it's bespoke, and it's just me. Anyone that comes in here will just be like, oh, wow. Okay, cool.
Do you think this is your studio for the next 10 years, 20 years? As long, I mean, like, is this like maybe your last studio if you stay in LA?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many other factors because it is attached to my house. So if we ever decide to move somewhere or get a better house or different locale, then obviously I'm not going to come back. There's no bathroom here, so it's not like it can like operate on its own. But I think I have gone into every decision I've made, whether it's moving to New York, moving to LA, now moving to Pasadena, within my mind, it's the decision that I'm making for the rest of my life. Like I'm not looking kind of for stages. I'm a little bit more short-sighted, where this solves a problem. It's great. I like being here. This house is perfect. It services our needs. It's, you know, and that's how I'm thinking about it. So will it be my last studio? Probably not, but yeah. I don't want, you know, headspace being taken.
Yeah. Well, that's a really, I think that's an important thing you're basically holding two contradictory things in your mind. This is the first time I've thought about it this way, which I think is really, really, really important for all the people at all stages of their career, but especially coming up, that you need to make big decisions with, even if you don't have maximum confidence, but like committed decisions of like, you're like, I'm going to go to New York because that's the thing, and that's where I'm going to go, and that's where I'm going to make it, and that's where I'm going to. And then a year later, realizing there's a better decision to be made. I'm going to go back to Santa Cruz. That's where I'm going to make it. That's where I'm going to do my thing. That's where I have my network with full confidence. So it's almost like you need to both go full on into this thing. I mean, you know, there's a clip that we put up that's now like the most viewed, most shared clip from one of my discussions with John about a career in music is irresponsible, that you really need to make insane decisions, but then also be really flexible. I mean, the idea is something I try to give advice to people that John and I have talked about this a lot, about how much should you specialize. And I think when you're starting out, you should basically be throwing yourself out there and trying everything, trying to be a writer, trying to be a musician, trying to be an artist, trying to be a producer, trying to be a mixer. Doesn't mean that you have to do everything at once, but try everything and go in those directions and move to the big city if you can while you're young before you have a family, and, you know, make those big leaps and see what happens. If you have any ability to do it at all, it's always risky. If you have the ability to do those things with the full commitment, like you're talking about, but then be able to switch at the same time if it's not working out. Yeah. Anyway,
the flexibility is extremely important. And I think when I get a lot of, you know, I'll have people reach out to me, be like, hey, you know, I'm graduating college. Can you grab lunch or jump on the phone and just tell me your experience? And the thing that I hear the most with kind of young up and coming producers, engineers, songwriters is this idea that there's a job waiting for you. That, you know, and it's understandable. You go to school for 4 years and you pay a shitload of money to either study music or music production, engineering, whatever it is. You know, in society, we're programmed to think like, cool, you've done your job now. Society is going to come around and take care of you.
They're going to gift you with this graduation present.
And I think there's a lot of careers that do have that. You know, if you're a doctor or, you know, in science and whatever, computer programmer, you can kind of take that to the bank.
Learn to code.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's value in that as well. But music, I think the thing I just try and shake people out of is like, this is going to be really hard and it's probably not going to work out. And so you need to kind of like readjust your thinking to where this is just going to be something that happens in your life that you might or might not make money for. And you need to kind of set everything else in your life up around to work around that, whether that's a relationship, whether that's a job. You know, when I was in Santa Cruz building a studio, I was working at a bike shop, the bike shop I worked at in college, just because they loved me. It was easy. And I was probably the worst employee at that point because I'd be like, hey, I've got an acoustician coming on Saturday and I'm not going to be able to make my shift, like blah, blah, blah. Like, can I come in for like a couple hours on Sunday? And everyone was like down for the cause, but that's what it's like. And, you know, there'll be some months where you're down and out and you're selling guitars, you know, to make rent or whatever. And it's the whole spectrum, and you just need to be able to be flexible. You need to keep your overhead down. And then ultimately something will catch on the longer you stay in. It's the people that feel that hardship within 6 months and are like, I'm out. Like I've
seen a lot of that.
Yeah. And that's understandable. It's not for everybody, but it's really the people that kind of like, you know, I think I was maybe 25 when I started working for Eric. And that's the first time I think I was like not hemorrhaging money on credit cards. And like, you know, like actually, I remember he's like, when he hired me, he's like, I'm going to pay you so much a week. And I was like, oh, you're going to pay me? Like that
was exactly my reaction.
That's
when he
the
told
deal.
Me.
Like you're going to, and I remember going and my dad picked me up from the airport and I was like, he's going to pay me. Like I'm going to be down there. And he's like, that's great.
That's so funny. I had such a similar reaction because when this is whatever, like 8 years before that, something like that. Well before that, when I was 19 and I met Eric, basically proposed like, I'll come sweep the floors, I'll do whatever. Can you still hear me? You've paused for a second. Okay. Where I basically was like, I'll do whatever you want. And then when he hired me for a gig, he said, I'll only be able to pay you, I think it was $7 an hour. And I was like, I'm getting paid. This is the greatest thing that's ever happened to me.
Yeah.
And you get to eat off the budget for because you know that's
the lifesaver. Yeah,
he does a whole project and you just eat the food budget. I'm out there ordering like 3 sandwiches and shit.
Yeah, for those who don't know, working for Eric is when you're his assistant or his engineer. It was this era of like he would spend 3 to 6 months, sometimes 3 to 12 months on a project, and that was your life for that set amount of time. Yep. 6 days a week, 14 hours a day. So you really lived these records with him, and there's an amazing that's an amazing experience. But like you're eating together, you know, you're getting to the studio around 9 or 10, drinking coffee together, eating lunch, eating dinner, and then, you know, usually in my case, my first project, which is Taking Back Sunday, shout out to those guys, going out drinking at night with them because it was like there was nothing else to do. Like you're getting out of the studio at 9 or 10 and, you know, you can't make plans. So it's like, well, we might as well all just kind of keep hanging out, you know? And that's such a cool lifestyle, but you know,
it's all in there. When I worked on the second Good Charlotte record that he did, but I was underage at the time. And I don't think the Good Charlotte guys drank, or at least at the time they didn't. And I was also trying to produce stuff outside of it. So I was doing the like 12, 14-hour day and then spending another 3 or 4 hours like making a Street to Nowhere record or mixing the matches or that sort of thing. And I was living at the studio too. So I just basically ate off the album budget when they ordered food, and then walked down to Cactus and had a burrito. I've probably eaten 1,500 meals at Cactus on Vine in Hollywood.
I'd say 60% of our carbon molecules are just from that Al Pastor.
Yeah, Al Pastor, absolutely.
Yeah, well, just one interesting point there. That's a testament to a great mentor as well. Like Eric, obviously, we were working for him and doing a service, providing a service, sort of. Not really. He can do everything on his own.
Just saving him a little bit of time sometimes.
Yeah, maybe here and there.
Probably just giving him a friend more than anything else.
Yeah, but the thing that I am trying to do and would love to be in a position to do is to accommodate other people doing that. You know, like the Eric letting you use the studio in your free time to produce records and hone your craft, because yes, working for someone like Eric, it was super important and I learned a lot, and it helped kind of codify a lot of my knowledge about audio engineering and the audio industry and the music industry. But all of the things that make me successful, or at least allow me to do this, are things that I've kind of learned and figured out on my own. It's kind of my own workflow that I've come to through him just being generous with the facility and resources. You know, there'd be instances where, I'd be like, my friend was like, oh, I got this pipe organ up in Santa Barbara that we want to go record at the Kate School or something. And Eric's like, wow, that sounds rad. You should borrow all of this really expensive shit and take it with you so you can do a good job and make it sound good. Yeah. Like that's such a huge testament to his generosity, his spirit, but also something that I really want to kind of pay forward. You know, if I'm ever in a position where I do have a bigger facility and I have some sort of a staff, you know, I know John has assistants and he seems to be kind of very, very virtuous with them. And that's just something that I value, and I hope that there's people out there doing it, because there's so much. You hear so many stories about like, yeah, I scrubbed toilets for fucking a year, and it's like this, like, people just getting taken advantage of. You know, unpaid interns just fucking washing dishes. Like, that shit sucks. Like, that's not what it's supposed to be like. You know, it's supposed to be a mentorship. Yeah,
absolutely. And, you know, it's one of the reasons that I'm doing these things is to try to provide some version of that, of the conversations and the ethic and the attitude for a lot of people that will never get to meet the big producer or be in the big city, or get, even if they are near them, it's like there's a limited number of spots where you can actually stand next to someone who's made hit records for years and just learn from them. I think what you said is really interesting about a lot of the skills that you have and the tools that you have came from self-discovery. I think the base of all of that is what we talk about a lot, which is watching someone like Eric be that committed to the process, just with what he's thinking about and how much time he's spending. And then just to be in that environment where everyone around you at all times is like, we're making stuff, we're making things, we're here making things. Yeah. We don't go do other things. And it's an insane lifestyle that, again, is out of balance for the long term. And even Eric is now, shifted over and gotten married and had a kid, and work-life balance is very different for him. But the era that you and I both worked for him, there was a commitment to making records that is just extreme. It's extreme and insane. And I loved it. I mean, I had a great time, and it's informed so much of how I think about making music, or approach making music. But that's really, like, more than anything else, I feel like just being in the environment at a high level and just being around people that want to make stuff all the time. It's, again, and, part of the reason I do this is not just for some virtuous thing, but the fact that I'm here talking to you, I get to talk to John, Matt Beckley, Donut, other people, and just talk about making records, and then get feedback from people, and then talk to people in the DMs and on the Discord. It keeps me in the mode too of making music. And I feel like, I feel like that's a more important part of this process than anybody really talks about, which is just keeping your head in the game. And you don't want to be in a position where you have to self-motivate, or you're going to have to do that anyway, but you don't want to sit there and be like, I really should spend more time doing this. What you really want to do is be in a position where the people around you and your habits are talking about music, thinking about music, making music. You have a routine, both psychologically and literally going into a place where you're just making shit all the time. I don't know anyone that's been successful that doesn't have a significant amount of that total, just like psychological investment in the process.
And going back to network, that helps as well. I mean,
that's a big part of it.
It does help. You came up in the Bay Area, living in LA now. There's so many other people doing some facet of what we're doing, and that ultimately becomes your group. Like a big part of my friend group are people that I work with, or bands that I've recorded or mixed, or session players, or people that I co-produce with, or whatever. It's like your world kind of becomes this, and it makes it a lot easier to kind of stay motivated, because you've always got these like prods and pokes, like, hey, what do you use on kick drum or whatever? And that kind of like, you're just always thinking about it. You're not just the one person in a small town that does this, and you have to rely on the internet, which is a great resource, but it helps when you've really got a network of people that it's your world, it's all.
That's a really important point. I think a lot of people think that networking is about getting someone who's going to give you an opportunity that you wouldn't have otherwise had, that like networking is about meeting the right person and then they're going to give you your shot. It turns out that networking, occasionally those things happen, but they're kind of out of your control. Networking is about building your group of people that's a community that makes you want to make stuff all the time, and you make stuff with them. And again, like you said, in your community in Santa Cruz, and I felt this way in the Bay, I feel this way in LA, there's a whole lot of people I know, which maybe we had one day where we wrote a song because our people put us together and we hit it off, but the song wasn't very good and we haven't worked in 4 years, but they're still a part of my network, and they're part of the psychology of being in a place where I, want to make stuff, and I see other people making stuff, and it motivates me and it challenges me. And the networking is not about finding the lucky opportunity. Networking is about building out your group of people and your psychological approach and your peer group to make music. Because we are, as we're finding out through the pandemic, we are communal creatures that suffer when we're alone. The idea that you're going to have this amazing music career without interacting with other people is just, it's a non-starter. It just doesn't exist. You have to, networking is about you making things and having people that you can bounce stuff off of, even if it's just emotionally.
Yeah. And also down to kind of the working class element of it too, like opportunities just arise. There's always, it's not all about a big break. If you're trying to do this for a living, it's about small breaks. It's about small things like, hey, my friend needs a thing to mix, someone to mix this, or like, hey, you want to meet with this person, like blah, blah, blah. Like, it's not even like this.
Hey, I need some help on this record in LA. And I met that guy Cian in New York. He's in Santa Cruz. Do you want to come down? It's exactly that. It's
all of these kind of small things, and you just kind of have to be open to it and interested and helpful and thoughtful and nice, and not be a dick. There's that.
Don't be a dick.
There's that age old trope of like the sound guy at the venue. The frumpy guy that comes up and is just angry about everything, and you just want to be the anti that. You want to be helpful, thoughtful, friendly, and then all the other stuff will kind of fall together.
In an age where gatekeepers are going away and everybody can participate, kindness goes a long way.
Yeah.
Kindness and compassion and being easy to work with, those people are just going to, the higher percentage of those people are going to win than before. So there's a bunch of great things going on in the chat. People are helping each other out. Yeah, we put these on Instagram, IGTV, YouTube.
I have not been seeing the chat. Sorry.
No, don't worry about it. So it's just people answering questions. I love that we have this community where someone new asks a question, and then people go, hey, here's where you can find it. Here's where you can help. Come join the Discord, et cetera, et cetera. It makes me really happy. Maybe we could get into a few questions.
Sure, yeah.
One of the things that John hates talking about gear, and you and I love talking about gear, and everybody always asks questions about gear. So let's talk about a little bit of gear.
Okay.
There were a bunch of questions, and I don't even know if it's worth reading all of them, that all are sort of in the same place. It seems like there's the people that have maybe a few $100 or a few $1,000s to spend on music gear. They're doing home recording. There's lots of questions about what's good, what's important. Do I need fancy converters? Is it the mic? Is it the preamp? Is the Apollo stuff good? So maybe I can go one at a time, but that topic seems to be really, really important to people. Let's see. I like this question from Hex. What's more important, mic or preamp? Mic all the way. I was going to say, one thing that I think is important, and I was thinking about this morning, and I don't know if I have a great way to I think I have a decent way to describe it, but with every aspect of your studio and piece of gear, there's sort of like an arc of, it's like diminishing returns. Like the more money you spend, you will get better quality up to a certain point. How you make those decisions is based on your budget, your like what you're actually trying to do primarily, and I'm sure other factors, but mainly those two. So something like, okay, is more important micro preamp? If you have a horrifically bad preamp, it's going to be a limiting factor. But if you have a decent preamp, if you have an Apollo preamp and like a 251 or a U47, you're going to get a much better sound than like, you know, a $500 mic and the greatest preamp ever.
Yeah.
Microphones
BT
are yeah, microphones are much more important than preamp. If you have a really shitty preamp, of course, it's going to be a limiting factor. But like an Apollo preamp and a $10,000 mic is going to be an A+ vocal sound.
Yeah, we're living in an era where the basic cheapest shit is very good, and even
Apollo
better
is fantastic.
Yeah, and like even like a Focusrite Scarlett or something like that, like all of those things get your foot in the door. I think one thing that I think is very different from a lot of people that are coming up in the music industry now, as opposed to when you or I, whereas I was predominantly recording bands, and that was, I was playing in bands. The band was the center. It was very rarely I was just making a hip hop track or just a singer songwriter with a production workup. So a lot of like the early experimenting, learning about gear was, you know, trying to overcome that. Oh, I need everything to be able to capture the entire picture of a band. I need drum mics. I need guitar mics. I need guitar amps. I need guitars. And so it's funny because that mindset is, I think it's healthy, because you're not thinking about like, okay, what's the best DI I need to buy? It's, I just need like 5 DIs. That's what I need to do. What's going to get me that? And then you build on that. You have your base level of gear. All of the gear that I had 15 years ago was trash. It's shit. But I still have a lot of it in my basement just because it's utility. You know, it just works and it gets the job done. And so having the luxury to think about, should I buy a $2,000 preamp or a $2,000 microphone? That gets me thinking of like, okay, well, where's the rest of your situation? Because that's a lot of money to put in one place. You know, like, is your computer up to snuff? Is your monitoring up to snuff? Is like, are you borrowing shit every time you need to, like, a guitar player is coming over? You know, do you need to borrow headphones? Like, there's a lot of utility stuff that I think gets kind of overlooked.
That's really important.
In the initial gear purchases, because it's not sexy, but man, having a bin full of XLR cables when you need an XLR cable is extremely valuable, and it'll save you half a day from going down to Guitar Center or whatever, or, you know, it's that type of shit.
Yeah. I would say that's a really important point that we've talked about it a little bit on some of the John stuff, but the workflow aspect is so much more important than people give it credit for. If you have like decent gear that's like serviceable, functional, gets you from A to B, and everything works and everything is consistent, the computer fires up, the monitoring sounds okay, like, and the headphones are working, the monitor mix on the headphones is right for the vocalist. If all that stuff is right, I'd much rather have that than the most expensive gear with like a cable on the fritz, because that'll drive you fucking insane. And you have to be able to, you know, so much of what we do, and again, it may be slightly different if you're a mix engineer versus a producer versus a tracking engineer versus an artist, whatever, but people underrate workflow so much, especially when I was coming up, or I go to like friends' studios, or just like starting out. So many things have the like, oh, the headphone doesn't quite work. It's a lot like, that's the fucking worst thing. Just fix that immediately. Fix that before you worry about upgrading your Focusrite to some fancy preamp. Get working headphones. Get monitoring setup that sounds good. I mean, getting a good computer that works, that doesn't crash, that's fast enough. That's where you should be spending your money and making sure. And I forget that oftentimes too, where I'm like, it's actually one thing, going back to Eric Valentine, which I loved about Eric, when a piece of gear like a MIDI keyboard wouldn't work, and you know where I'm going with this, he would take it out in the parking lot and smash it. And it gives you the, like, a MIDI keyboard on the fritz, the USB wasn't working. It's like, this is a $300 keyboard. Of course, he can afford this. So it's not just, you know, you don't want to go just smashing your gear, but like, this $300 MIDI keyboard isn't working. Why are we spending any time like it's just fucking up the workflow. We're going to take this thing out. We're going to smash it. And we have the catharsis of just like breaking it in the parking lot, hitting with a baseball bat, throwing it, and then it's gone. And you have to replace it. So the idea that you can have stuff that kind of works and the cable's a little bit like, fuck all of that. Get rid of all that and it'll be better than upgrading your preamps or something.
Yeah, get the basics. You know, it's like a lot of cooking analogies there. Like you need your pots and pans, you need your basic chef's knife, you need, you know, salt, pepper. Like don't go buying a pasta machine, you know, before you have like all of this shit figured out, you know. So that's a big thing with the gear purchases, as opposed to like, I mean, yeah, mic pre's are amazing, and there's a huge benefit to having a Class A tube mic pre, but you really won't reap that benefit unless you're kind of 20 steps into the game already with everything else. Like if you don't have speakers, you're not going to be able to hear what the fuck that mic pre is doing, so it doesn't even matter. And then also a realization that we had the luxury of, with, you know, working with someone like Eric, who is very tuned into kind of A/B listening, really understanding what has value in audio and what doesn't, is knowing that there is a audio industrial complex that we're living in right now. Like when you go to Sweetwater and you go to Reverb, it is a giant industry, and a lot of the stuff is the same. You know, like
it's designed to get you to get excited and spend money.
Yeah, and I get it. I understand why. There's a lot of people that want to make music, and I see that as being a path in. Like that's a tangible way for them to see themselves being proactive about getting into the music industry. But it's some of these things are just so hyped up. You know, converters, clocks. Those are a great example of things. Like,
let's talk about converters. Because I still haven't gotten to do my shootout of Apollo versus, I don't know, it was the Antelope, the Link stuff, any of these sort of things. Can you just, one of the things I love about you is that you're very no bullshit, and you have opinions about things only when you're informed on them to the best of your ability. You've gone through various converter processes, and I know that when I was with Eric, we did a lot of the like A/B actual scientific shootouts, but he did a ton more when you were around. He started doing a lot more after I left. Do you have give me some thoughts on converters? Because, you know, people are saying Apollo's fine, Apollo's shit compared to everything. It's night and day if you get fancy Lynx Aurora or Antelope. But give me your thoughts on just talking about converters.
I mean, it's hard to, in terms of the actual sonics of converters, I don't think I've ever been in a position where I've actually been able to do a real A/B between two converters that are the similar price, similar feature set, because there's so much other shit going on with converters. Like when you're buying an Apollo, you're not just buying the conversion, you're buying the Apollo ecosystem. You're buying, does it have the right Thunderbolt port for your computer? Are you gonna have to buy a shitload of dongles to make it work? Do you already own $1,000 worth of UAD plugins? So are you kind of tied to that?
And they've got built-in preamps as well.
And so when you come down to the actual converters, I mean, a lot of the manufacturers for a long time were using these same chips. So then it comes down to, it's not even the converters that you're listening to, it's the analog front end and back end. And then it's like, okay, are you in a position to really be able to hear that and take advantage of that, you know? And especially now that all of the basic stuff is at a very, very good level, you really need a lot of room, a lot of speakers, a lot of microphones, a lot of like other gear to really even come close to acknowledging a difference between converters. So the long story short is I put those very, very low on the list. I think if they service your needs, as in it has the right amount of outputs and inputs, it fits the budget, and it interfaces well with whatever software you're using. Let's be honest, like these are third-party companies now that are coming out with products to sell products, not coming out with products to service your needs as an audio producer. And so a lot of times you'll have one version of a driver that doesn't work with one version of Pro Tools and you're fucked, you know? So having something that is solid, that works, that you can count on every day, especially if you're recording other people, that is paramount when, you know, deciding on a converter. Like, it just needs to work. It just needs to be something that you don't think about, because there's so many more important things to think about than conversion.
I think that's a great way to put it. I still plan to do the A/B tests and run things with the Apollo versus the Lynx versus maybe another set of converters. I think that for almost everybody that's watching this, that watches these, that listens to these, I think there's probably something more important to spend money on in your setup than converters. Even for me, like, I could probably upgrade my converters, but boy, is it going to be fun to have a new synth or new plugins or something like that if all the money is even. That being said, I am going to do the shootout, and I will post it on the Discord and post it for the community to listen to. But I think a lot of people get hung up in conversations that happen online about what's important rather than thinking about the process of actually making records. You know, I off the top of my head, if I'm thinking hierarchy, I think probably number one is your computer being good and stable. Number two is monitoring, getting not just the quality of the speakers, but a room that sounds good, a place where you can actually hear everything. Because if your computer doesn't function well, that's a huge limiting factor. And if it doesn't process fast enough, if it crashes, if it's unstable, if it's not updated, all those sort of things. And then if you can't hear what you're doing, it's just by definition a limiting factor. You don't know what's happening. And from there, I think it's just based on what you're doing. If you're an artist, maybe it's your vocal chain and the instruments. If you're a producer, maybe it's the plugins or whatever helps you produce the way you do. If you're a mix engineer, you know, it's different for different people. But I think converters are pretty low on the list for a lot of people. If you have something solid and basic like Apollos, like, you know, I think these things are of a high quality that, again, if you're getting up into the, you know, I mean, I think what you said, you have the Antelope stuff. What's the
Antelope 32, Orion 32. I mean,
at a certain level, it makes sense, I think, to get the top end of everything. And obviously you want to use your ears and listen to things. But by and large, I think people overhype the importance of converters.
Most people, unless you're a mastering engineer, unless you're, again, you have all the other pieces and you're doing very, very critical listening. That's really the only circumstance where I can think like, okay, you really need to put a lot of thought into this. But maybe as a mixing engineer, but even still, if you're mixing in the box and you're not sending stuff out to outboard, then, like, you know, how important is that? Like, are you going to be doing a lot of conversions, or are you it's literally just going to be coming out your speakers, which at point, like, a Focusrite is fine for that.
Yeah, if you're mixing in the box, if your mixer is mixing in the box, if your mixer is mixing in the box, the conversion is only going to your speakers, and the subtle difference in what you're hearing, I think, is, I mean, obviously, if you have a complete nonsense old converter, maybe that makes a difference. But if you have something that was built in the last year or two that it is more than $500, you're probably fine.
Yeah,
I think people overhype a lot of that stuff. Let's see. I'll see what else in this range. Yeah, the mic preamp thing is really interesting. It's a pretty clear. Microphone's much more important. There's a reason that there aren't $15,000 preamps that people use on all kinds of records. There's a reason that people use $15,000 mics.
Yeah. Well, someone brought up, and I think it was on the Discord a couple weeks ago, you know, it was a mic pre shootout. And I don't think people understand that mic pre's used to just be, you kind of get what you get. You know, like when you had a console, the mic pre's were just there. You didn't think a lot about them. You know, I think, you know, I worked on an old API a couple years ago for a record, and there wasn't even like a gain adjustment. It was just like, it gave you a mic signal, and that was its job. And you kind of moved on. Moving the microphone a half an inch to the left on a speaker cab or from a vocalist is going to make 1,000 times more difference than a microphone pre. Now, I'm not talking about like if you've got an old Ampex and you're distorting it, you know, you're getting like what John talked about.
Let's say this again. Let's break this down. The difference between like an Apogee mic preamp, and obviously, actually, I don't even need to do this. I've done these shootouts. The difference between an Apogee mic preamp and a 1073 is much more narrow than just moving the mic, like having bad mic placement.
Yeah. Totally.
Much smaller. Moving a mic and good mic placement, good technique is way more important.
And especially if you're recording conservatively. Now, if you are recording a drum set and you've got a rack full of Neves and you're really pushing the signal into that, now you're in the territory where like you're starting to kind of really see the coloration. But there's
transformers in them. They do interesting things like harmonic distortion that we've talked about.
But that's a commitment too, because most of the times now, like I would never do that in a situation or in a recording situation if I didn't have a chance to kind of hear it the opposite. I would never commit to just being like, I'm just going to mash this Neve, this 1064, and just I get what I get. It's like, no, I'm going to need to hear it. And most of the time now, people don't have the time to do that. You know, like if you're a working engineer and you're in a studio and the drummer's showing up at 11, it's like, you're not going to have time to geek out on that. It's like, you just need signal. You better record conservatively because I guarantee you can get most of that saturation through some sort of plugin or reamping or something down the line. Like there's no reason to get it going into the computer like that nowadays. They're just...
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. There's a lot of people asking good questions on the chat. I want to prioritize questions that people have asked beforehand a little bit, but also please jump on the Discord after. I'm sure Cian and I will both be on there talking shit and answering some of these questions. There's a lot of sort of follow-ups and specifics that I think would be cool to get into about specific gear. I don't know if you had much experience with this. Mop the Kid asked about the standard hi-fi vocal chain that a lot of people are using for pop and hip hop, which is the C800 1073 CL1B. Have you come across that? Do you have any opinions on that collectively or individually?
Yeah, I mean that's a sound. I think of my era, it was a lot more of people using like the Avalon mic pre as opposed to the 1073. I always found the 1073 is kind of an interesting choice for pop vocals.
Yeah.
Just because it's not like in my opinion, like a flattering mic pre for vocals.
It's got a little more distortion, a little more sort of mid-range.
Yeah, it's not I mean, the big mover there is the C800. I mean, that's a serious microphone.
Like a $10,000 tube mic that a lot of people are using for pop vocals and hip hop.
And I mean, that's the sound of that chain. Let's be real. The CL1B is not like an amazing compressor. It's kind of a utility compressor. It's in the background. It's benign. It's not heavy-handed. It's not like going through a Fairchild or something like that where it's really going to imprint the sound. So with that, I mean, the C800, put that into a Focusrite, it's still going to sound like a C800.
I totally agree.
It's still going to sound great. Not the right choice for every vocalist. It's a very bright microphone. It's,
very bright.
Can enhance sibilance a little bit too much. I put that in the same category as like a 251. It's just like it can take your head off if it's not used right. My engineering mindset always goes from dark to bright. Like I always lean dark when I record and add the brightness later. I find when I record too bright and I try and darken things, that's when things start to fall apart for me. So very rarely would I go for such a hi-fi signal chain like that. Personally.
Well, this is why you and I both love ribbon mics. Those microphones record very dark, but get so much high-end information that's recorded that when you boost up the high end sounds really big and natural and non-artificial, I should say.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd much rather kind of go that route. But I mean, I'm not going to shit on a C800 1073 CL1B. Like that's a great chain. If you could afford that fucking chain, chances are you've done something else right. So you probably know what you're doing.
16 G's, something like that. So if you got $16,000 to spend on a pop mic and vocal chain, that's a fine way to go. It'll get you a nice bright 2021 vocals.
Yeah, no shit. Yeah, and Zach, shout out. Yes, I start every recording with a Royer. That's how I start. I apologize to anyone that has a penchant for Royers. They're just my least favorite fucking microphone. I'm sorry.
It's funny. It's funny when you said that and you've been posting on the Discord about how much you hate Royer ribbon mics. I remember it's 121. Is that the main one?
Yeah.
I've used that not in a decade, but I always remember putting that up at Barefoot at Eric's. Putting that up with like 6 other microphones and never ever once choosing the Royer.
Yeah, you're overlooking something very important. The one that we had at Barefoot had a piece of tape on it that said "suck ass," and that piece of tape was on that microphone for 10 years. I didn't put it on. It was in Eric's handwriting.
It may have been put on when we were, it's funny because I now like vaguely remember this.
It just said suck ass and it didn't say anything else. And I remember Eric, I think he was going through selling stuff and he's like, maybe my Royer's just bad. Like it's never sound good. Maybe it's fucked up. And I was like, I think you're on the Royer website. Like, I think you could probably get it fixed. And so I think I was assisting, or I had Justin or someone at the time, and I was like, you got to send this shit in. And then I remember it was like packaged, ready to go. And I think it might've been Justin. And I was like, did you take that sticker off that said suck ass before we fucking send it back to the company that he's... Anyways, that might have been too much information, but that always stuck in my head.
That's amazing. Yeah, Antonius on the chat there. Cole's 4038 says overhead's dark on the way in, but open up nicely. Cole's 4038 is my favorite ribbon mic. That thing just sounds Desert Island mic. Very beautiful. Yeah, I don't know what it is with Royers, but maybe Royer can send me some mics.
Some people love them. I know the Mojave is I think the same company, and I have used those condenser mics. It's like a different branch, and those actually do sound great. I've had great luck with those, so I don't think it's a company.
That's fantastic. Let me see if there's any other good. We could do some sort of like rando questions. I like this question just because I was in touch with one of the guys in the band earlier. Michael asked, what's the weirdest thing you've ever done for a sound? I love this topic, and I have lots of stories of like when I did the Dredge record, we like went up to the Marin Headlands to these old like missile tubes up in there where there's these big caverns. We brought a remote recorder and did claps and did singing. But the one I was thinking of, like doing remote recording, doing sampling things, there's no reason that people should not be doing that. Like do that shit all the time, especially if you're a producer, like getting your own sound, sampling your own stuff, recording stuff on, now everybody's got it on the iPhone, which has compressors and limiters. But one of the things I did on this band, the Mowgli's, is we were in Swing House, my old studio, the one after Barefoot, after I left Barefoot. And they were doing construction. They built my room first, but they were still doing construction on the rest of the building. And we took a break from working on one of the songs, and there was a buzzsaw going. And I was like, that's kind of a weird tone. So I recorded on my iPhone and just like it had a cool like timbre that was phasing or something as it was going, just like a skill saw or something, and sampled it on the song, and it became like the high end ethereal thing. I put some verb on it. So that kind of stuff, do that shit all the time. You got any things off the top of your head you've done of like weird recordings? Yeah. I mean, it can just kind of come from anywhere. You can go somewhere, you can try and find something. We were working on the Slater Kinney record with Annie St. Vincent producing. We were at Barefoot, and they had this one song. It was the title song on the record called The Center Won't Hold. And at this point, my setup was just so elaborate with, I had things in the echo chamber going. I had things in the live room going. And, like it's all analog. It's all patch based. So like you unplug one thing, something in another room is going to make a noise. And we had this old Electro Harmonics little mini synth that was fucked up, like held together with board tape. I think you might have used it once or twice. It's like, It's a really cool synthesizer. But I remember Corin or Carrie had just switched it on, and it just it just exploded through the building, not in a bad way, but it was like a click, and it was just like, what was that? And I was like, let's record that. And if you listen to the recording, the start of the album is this like us just taking those sounds and programming them. And we made a different bunch of sounds and like programmed the entire initial beat with it. And it was just like, it just happened. You couldn't think to prepare for that. You just have to be ready to record it. And it's sort of like the photographer philosophy. Like great photographers are just ready to take the picture whenever it happens. Great engineers are ready to record the sound wherever it is, whenever it happens. You're just hitting record. You're always hitting record. This is for songwriters too. Like have the voice recorder running because somebody might say something or sing something and then they forgot it 5 minutes later. Like That's a really great thing. Well, we're at about an hour. There's more questions we can get to. We obviously should do this again. This is a blast.
Sure. Yeah.
I hope people enjoyed it, and we'll be jumping on the Discord after and answering more questions. Those of you on the chat that seem to discover this live, not knowing who either of us are, just come say what's up. You can check in my profile. We'll put the stuff up on YouTube and iTunes and Spotify and all that. Cian, I fucking love you, man. It's so good to see you.
Thanks for having me on. This is fun.
Yeah, we'll do it again for sure. Thank you guys for watching.
All right, buddy.
Much love.
See you guys.
Bye, guys.